Morning, guys. It's Wednesday, August 27th, 5:24 a.m. Central Time. Grain markets are mixed this morning. December corn futures down 1.25 at 408.25. November soybeans up 2.75 at 1052.25. December Chicago wheat down 3.75 at 528. December Kansas City wheat down 3.75 at 514. December spring wheat is down 2 cents at 587.75. We've got some weather news to start off this morning.
So, dryness continues to build in parts of the southern and eastern U.S. Corn Belt as well as the Delta. Flash drought concerns exist for areas of southern Illinois, southern Missouri, western Tennessee, Arkansas, and northern Louisiana. The majority of Ohio has experienced the driest August in 133 years, according to Iowa state weather data. Many of these areas have seen little to no rainfall over the last 30 days, and precipitation during the last 2 weeks has been minimal across an even broader region, including large portions of Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. This morning's forecast offers very little Corn Belt rainfall during the next 10 days, and even the extended outlook remains discouraging.
The term flash drought is being tossed around for some of these areas, especially that pocket of like West Tennessee into Arkansas. But I think there are other areas that this could apply to as well, even though they're not showing up on the drought monitor necessarily. Let's look at a whole bunch of maps here. Here's rainfall over the last 7 days. Really not much to speak of for the vast majority of the central Corn Belt and peripheral areas also. This is the last 14 days. And these light blue areas to even the dark blue areas are like, an inch of rain or less. And a lot of areas saw nothing. A lot of these areas have seen nothing. This is the historical map, and this is what you mentioned with regard to Ohio. So when it says 133 in your area, that means that the August month-to-date precipitation totals you've been the driest of the last 133 years. So almost the entire state of Ohio has been the driest of the last 133 years for the month of August, seasonally month to date. The same can be said or similar type things for the eastern part of Indiana into Kentucky, southern Illinois, into Missouri, and even Iowa has been much drier than normal in August. Northern Illinois has been drier than normal. So I don't know that this is necessarily ideal. As you mentioned, very little rain in the forecast. There was some stuff toward the tail end of the 8 to 14 day period that perhaps could apply. But this is becoming an issue, I think, for growers in Ohio and parts of Indiana and Kentucky, West Tennessee, southern Illinois, Missouri. I'm very curious to see what you guys think about this. Drop us some comments. So, in Ohio especially, which appears to be a problem, it hasn't really shown up on the drought monitor, but I think it's gonna. They started off wet. They had delays. They had some corn that was planted early and then a whole bunch that was planted late. There was some replant. It was kind of messy. I just don't know that this is shaping up for a really good crop in those areas. The other thing to be aware of is that temperatures are very cool, and this big cool front is supposed to extend for another week to maybe even 2 weeks. Mackenzie, you noticed I'm wearing a sweatshirt this morning. It's 53 degrees in Middle Tennessee this morning, which is unheard of for late August. Usually it'd be, mid 70s overnight, but it's cool everywhere, and that's going to persist maybe to a lesser degree during the 8 to 14 day period. So I think that this dryness in the central, call it southern or eastern parts of the Corn Belt, is noteworthy, and it's going to have an effect on the crop. If they don't catch some rains here, I think soybean yield in particular is at tremendous risk for sure.
Grain futures were mixed on Tuesday. The December 25 corn contract fell nearly 3 cents, settling near 410 per bushel, while the November 25 soybean contract gained about 2 cents to close near 1050 per bushel. As we're all aware, both markets remain under pressure from expectations of record crops. Wheat futures were mixed, with Kansas City futures edging lower, while Chicago futures posted modest gains. Traders continue to watch closely for developments from this week's U.S.-China trade talks.
All right, we're going to get to the U.S.-China talks here in a second. Let's run some charts just to kind of give you the lay of the land. It's kind of a slowish news day today. The corn market has backed off a little bit the last couple of days following a multi-day rally. I personally think, just based on the calendar and what's going on, I think first notice day could have something to do with this. First notice day for September futures is Friday. And if you're a farmer and you're holding a basis contract, you're going to be forced to price or roll. And I think given the calendar, given that we've got harvest coming up, there's going to be a lot of grain priced here during the next couple of days, and that could perhaps pressure the market. You still got a gap on the D's corn chart in the low 430s. That would be kind of a target if we could extend this little bounce. Soybean market looks better. We've been generally trending higher since early August. We have yet to penetrate those highs from June or even from back in February also, but it does look better. Wheat is terrible. Kansas City wheat futures posted fresh lows again overnight, which seems to be like a daily occurrence here. I don't have anything nice to say about wheat. The market's been very bad.
So, as we just talked about, U.S. China trade talks will resume this week in Washington, D.C., when senior Chinese negotiator Li Changgang meets with U.S. trade and treasury officials. Soybeans are expected to be a central topic during the negotiations. Earlier this month, President Trump urged China to substantially boost its purchases of U.S. soybeans, but Beijing has yet to buy any new crop beans. Before agreeing to any major purchases of soybeans, China wants the U.S. to remove its 20% tariffs tied to fentanyl trade. China, however, has yet to offer a crackdown plan that the U.S. considers adequate.
So the specifics about this meeting are not yet released. I believe it's going to be either Thursday or Friday this week. And as you mentioned, this dude looks like a very nice gentleman. Li Changgang is the vice commerce minister. He's going to have some sort of delegation. And on the U.S. side, Jamison Greer, who's the U.S. trade rep, and some Treasury Department officials should be involved in the meeting. So we'll see what happens. As we mentioned yesterday, China has not booked a single bushel of new crop U.S. soybeans. And herein lies the problem for U.S. farmers. We've just seen drastically reduced demand on the export market. One thing I will note is that Bloomberg, who did that piece, no, that was actually a journal piece, but they did a piece on soybeans overnight, and they pretty much copied my chart, which is interesting that they recreated and copied my chart. This is like one of the biggest news organizations on the planet. So who's mainstream now? You know, no, I'm actually flattered, totally flattered by this, but very, very clearly, like we posted this yesterday, and then they had it posted this morning. Here's another way to look at this. Of the new crop, we've talked about how China hasn't bought new crop beans. China hasn't bought new crop beans. Unknown destinations are responsible for 40% of all new crop U.S. soybean sales. So it is possible that China is responsible for some of that 40%, maybe even a large portion of that 40%. It still doesn't change the fact that the new crop book of sales, whether it's China or not, is the second worst of the last 10 years. So if China has been involved here in some of these sales to unknown destinations, it hasn't really been in a very meaningful way, because that's only a couple million metric tons.
If you guys haven't checked out our premium content, you sure need to do so. Joe, can you tell our viewers about yesterday's premium video?
My friend Lewis Stearns, who is an agronomist out of Ohio but does the entire Corn Belt, was on yesterday and talked about, he kind of ran through the growing season. He started off with April, then went to May, went to June, ran to July, into August, talked about weather patterns that he observed and things that he observed in the field while scouting and doing his work in agronomy, and talked about yield potential and what he's seeing. I didn't make him provide us with a national yield estimate, but I asked for some ideas, and that's what we got. It was really cool stuff. He had some slides and a whole bunch of pictures and all sorts of stuff that I thought was super interesting. Matt Bennett is going to be on today. We're doing 20 questions. We've got a mailbag full of questions from our premium subscribers about grain markets, grain marketing, cash grain, spreads, all of that stuff. Should be a great video. Me and Matt are going to tape here in about an hour. If you guys want to see the premium stuff, go to standardgrain.com. You can sign up this morning. This is a $50 per month subscription. You can cancel at any time. There's no other fee, no other obligation. Nobody tries to sell you anything else. If you're the decision maker on your farm operation, these are videos and content that will help you to make decisions. Everything from grain marketing to policy to crop insurance to budgeting, weather. We cover all of that stuff. And I'm not an expert in anything, but we have a lot of contributors who are experts in those individual and particular fields that help me out with this. And it's really fantastic stuff. Give that deal a shot this morning, guys.
U.S. investments in renewable energy projects fell sharply in the first half of the year, down 36% compared to the previous 6 months. Over the same period, wind and solar projects fell 18% compared to the first half of 2024. While wind and solar have become the largest source of new power generation in the U.S., the sector has relied heavily on government subsidies. Recent policy changes under President Trump, however, have rolled back those subsidies. Last week, Trump announced that his administration will no longer approve new wind and solar projects, claiming they take up too much land.
Yeah. And Bloomberg had a cool chart about this. So you saw this like spike in renewable investments in really like the back half of 22, 23 and into 24. And now things have cooled off a little bit. Most of the stuff mentioned in the article here was wind and solar. Biofuel would be our bigger concern. And we have some potential positives on the horizon. I think that the RVO stuff, whenever it's announced, is going to be positive. We're still really not, we don't have anything that's going to convince anybody to start using sustainable aviation fuel, though, in airplanes. And that's what we'd really like to see. They only extended 45Z for a couple of years, and some of the guidance is still very not clear. So we're waiting on that, and it hasn't really helped the corn market or anything like that.
The outlook for Russia's wheat crop has been raised once again. For the second consecutive week, Russian consulting firm ICAR increased its outlook to 86 million metric tons, up from 85.5. The upward revision reflects expectations of stronger yields in several regions. ICAR also lifted its wheat export forecast to 43 million metric tons, up from 42.5. Despite a technical rebound on Tuesday, Chicago wheat futures remain under pressure, hovering near 4-year lows.
We mentioned earlier the Kansas City wheat futures posted fresh life of contract lows in that December contract overnight. And the fact that these groups out of Russia keep raising the crop estimates. I mean, ICAR, that's 2 weeks in a row. And who knows, maybe they come up again. It's not helpful. Russia, of course, and we've talked about this before, it has almost always been in recent years the world's top wheat exporter. And that's why they matter so much. 21.5% of all projected global exports for the new crop marketing year. So they are kind of the global price setter. And when they have big crops and large exports, it's not helpful to our market. What did cattle do yesterday?
Cattle futures climbed to new highs once again yesterday. Live cattle were $137 to $227 higher. Feeders saw gains ranging from $237 up to $317. Box beef prices were sharply higher. Choice was up $468 at $413.17, and Select was up $538 at $390.76.
Outside markets are pretty quiet. Stocks are up just fractionally. Treasuries are off a little bit. U.S. dollar is what I would call higher to sharply higher. Crude oil is off 22 cents in the October WTI at 63.03. Have a great day, guys. We'll be back on Thursday.